Hello and welcome back to the Art of Parenting. This is your host, Jeanne-Marie, and today I have Cathy Himlin. And Cathy, thank you so much for being here. We're going to talk all about family law, about rejection, about connection, just about parenting. And it's so nice to know that you are local. So wonderful, wonderful discovery before we got on the call. So again, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. So, Cathy, I always like to get started by having my guests define what the art of parenting means to them.
The art of parenting for me is basically getting into the child's world. That's the basics of it. I come from more of an attachment parenting background, and what we need to do, in my belief, is that if we understand the child's developmental needs, their emotional, psychological, physical needs, and then understand their perspective of what's happening in that moment, that'll help us figure out what we need to do to help support them. And it just seems to go more smoothly that way. So reflecting their feelings, validating, active listening, and empathy. I mean, I teach that basically.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And before we get started in our conversation, I'd love if you could take a moment to introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and the work that you're doing today.
Yes. My background is I'm a marriage and family therapist, licensed marriage and family therapist, and a professional counselor as well. There's different licenses in California. Those are two of them. And what I specialize in is high conflict divorces, so families that are involved in high conflict divorces or custody disputes, and helping children and families who have children who are rejecting a parent reunify, reconnect, just repair the relationship, whatever's happened. Oftentimes in these families, there's a lot of discord, and kids get all caught up in it. It's confusing, and in some of the developmental stages, as you probably know, they tend to see things in black and white. So if there's two people and someone's always right or wrong, then one of the parents is right, one of the persons is wrong, for example. And so sometimes just internally, there's an internal world experience the children are having the parents aren't aware of. And so I try to help get to the bottom of why a child may be rejecting a parent and then try to figure out ways to repair that relationship around through attachment methods.
Hmm. Yeah, that's hard work because trying to understand. I mean, first of all, I've have the lived experience of being a child of a divorced couple when I was quite young. I don't think it was very high conflict. It was upsetting for sure. But how because I know one thing you say is that, how to understand why children are rejecting a parent, even if there isn't any abuse or any, hardcore thing, but still they're rejecting one of the parents. And how do you understand that? How do you get down to the reasoning?
Well, through the therapy side of my practice, I have two different companies. When I'm doing therapy, what I do is intakes basically, and I ask pointed questions about what the situation is to the parents. So I'm getting a background from the adult perspective. Then when I talk to the children and I need to alone, and I just try to understand simple things like, what would you do to change this parent's home, parent A's home, or parent B's home? Is there anything different if you could wave a magic wand? Some people call that the miracle question. I guess that's a newish term. But I just say that. And I get a lot out of them because they're desperate for an adult to listen because right now they're getting lost. So the majority of my cases, even the ones who don't want to be there, they may be afraid, they may be angry, they don't have anything to do with me because they know what this means. I'm going to be doing family therapy with them eventually. They spill out a lot. So it's pretty easy if I make it non-threatening, of course, and just ask questions and just get curious and try to just understand them. Same thing you
Right,
do with their parents. So they get it
right.
when you do that.
And is there like a common reoccurring reason that comes back with children,
So many. There's a
really?
lot of patterns. So I'm writing about that right now in a book I'm writing, because I've been looking at that over the years. that I've been working with these families. And one of them is, again, thinking in black and white, depending on their developmental stage, although I've seen all the way up to teenagers doing that. The other one is they just simply want to be in the family home. So whoever stays there just wants to, whatever parent stays there, they don't want to go to the other home. That's not their home. That's not their stuff. So that's another reason. Could be anxiety from one of the parents has more anxiety than the other, and they want to stay around the one that has anxiety because they want to caretake or make sure everything's okay. And it's nothing that they're really thinking about. There's just this feeling about this parent doesn't seem okay. I should stay here because when I'm here, I know they're okay. That type of thing happens too. And there's a slew of the other reasons that I've come across, but it's very interesting. Oh, permissive parenting is another one. Nothing against people allowing their children to do things, but when you let them have like 10, 12 hours of screen time or stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning, and you're a, middle school or teenager, that's way more appealing than going to the other structured parent's home that has chores for you to do, homework time, and things over there. And I see that happening a lot too.
So just the too big of a contrast between the two homes, basically.
Right. When we have two co-parents that are not co-parenting, because what would be ideal for these kiddos so they're not so polarized and pulled from either home, pulled or pushed from either home, is to have those two parents work together and try to have things similar. Like not exactly the same, but the problem is when people are going through a divorce or custody dispute, if they've been living together, their big thing in their lives personally is they're trying to push away from the other person and formulate their own thing or their own experience and environment with their children. And so sometimes I see parents almost in a rebellious mode, almost teenage-like, because they want to do it themselves. They don't want to be told what to do. But I think what we do is we lose sight of what the children need, and we get caught up in the power struggle is what I've been trying to get out of my mouth right now. The power struggles that the parents have sort of supersede and cover up all this stuff, so they don't see these children, and how they're being impacted.
Right.
So I think that's part of the problem.
Right. Is being the adult in the room, which is not always easy for adults who are going through conflicts. It's interesting because just the other day I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is having, little issues and would like to leave the home, but she's got young children and all this. And she was saying, wouldn't it be nice if the children could just stay in the house and then we take turns coming in and out of the house? Like that would be the ideal. But I mean, that's three different houses, but that would be the ideal. Yeah.
It is a thing. I've been on a few cases like that. I read about them before I actually saw a few. The ideal would be sort of like when we have dependency cases when kids are having to be put in foster care. The ideal is put the kid in their family home for both those different courts. Let the parents come and go. Because that way their routine, their world isn't disrupted and they still get equal time or whatever time. I'm not going to go into what I think time should look like, but time with their parents like is needed and it's shared in the same place and they're not disrupted. But financially, that's a nightmare for most people, even people that have resources. There's very few, and of the few cases I've worked with, they were only able to pull it off for like a year. And in the textbooks, or maybe not textbooks, but some of the literature out there, I've seen where they've had like one place, two places. So the parents flip back and forth between an apartment and then the family home. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure how realistic that is because then they have no privacy. Right. So it would need to have three. Right. It would be such a great place, this place, this world for these kids. If we could do that for them, that would probably resolve the majority of the problems I see. They don't have to switch schools. They don't miss friends. Relatives aren't disrupted. Of your extended family, they don't get cut out from their grandparents or aunts or uncles or cousins. It's really hard on them. It is traumatic to go through a divorce for parents. They're going through their own level of trauma, and these kiddos have their lives completely turned upside down, especially if they have to move away from their social support, like the school they're used to or the friends they're used to.
Right. And it's my understanding though that when you are going through a divorce, you can't really move away, can you? Like you can't go to another country or another state or all this, or is that something I've made up?
it isn't something you
No,
need.
okay.
In certain cases, it depends on what the orders are. If there's an order, sometimes they put an order that you're not allowed to move away
Okay.
without permission of the other parent, or there's a hearing about it. I don't remember, and I'm not an attorney. I can't tell you if there's a law about it, but I know in most of the cases I have, it is a rule pretty much that you don't go out of the county for most cases without permission or 30 days or notice, even just go on vacation. So
Oh,
to
wow.
actually move a child, you know, I've seen people move children across the country into other countries, but they got in trouble for it. So
Right.
again,
Right.
I don't know what the
Right.
actual law is about it. I just know it is a thing that you're not supposed to do that because
Right.
and then what's that doing to the kid? A parent just up and moves a child without being able to say goodbye, like abruptly, and so
Well, I moved away from to another continent from my father, but I think it was an agreement that my parents had. It wasn't, it was that's just the way it was, and I've basically always lived on a different continent than one of my parents. So
wow,
not easy,
no,
not easy, but that's the hand I got dealt. So, but yeah, um,
hard.
yeah, yeah, no, and it's funny because I had never really thought about it until right now. Like to me, that's just the way it always was, and that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, anyways, one thing that I would like for us to maybe touch upon is someone who's listening to us or watching this episode who is really not happy in their marriage, in their family life, and are really contemplating, asking for a divorce or a separation.
Right.
What would be kind of, preparing for that, preparing yourself, preparing your family? Like, what would be the steps that you would give to somebody in that situation?
Sure. Because I do have parents I consult with as well, and they will come to me before. There's a counseling that's really cool. I'll just say on the side note, it's called discernment counseling, where the two parents or the couple goes in and tries to decide, kids or not, with a therapist who has that training to figure out, is this for us? Is this what we
Mm,
want? But putting that aside, I just wanted to mention that um, definitely get legal counsel. That's one of the first things I tell people. I can't give legal advice. I'm not, again, I'll say this again, I'm not an attorney, but you need to talk to an attorney to see what your options are. It doesn't mean you have to file for divorce or file for separation or custody or anything. Just go get educated. Find somebody if you are going to go through it that isn't um out for somebody's throat, like so to speak. They're not out to get your co-parent. They're not out to get your future ex-spouse. They're just there to help make things better. Find somebody that understands children. That would be, I would love all the attorneys to understand children. So that would be one of the things because you can't go into this and figure out what you want unless you understand your options. I would really do everything I could. And what I tell parents that come to me that haven't made that decision, or even in the early stages, please, please, let's try to repair the relationship first. Let's try to
right.
see if there's anything we can do to fix this. Because the last thing I want you to have to go through when I talk to clients or the people I consult is for you to look back 5, 10 years from now and go, man, if I just would have gone to counseling, if I just would
Mm,
have done this, you're going to have those regrets. You go through that anyways. You're going to have regrets through this process because it's really a tough process. This is not easy. I know it feels like it in the media. Oh, just go get a divorce. No. And if you have kids, you have property, that takes it to a whole nother level. So really try to make sure, short of any abuse happening and violence of any kind, that it's scary and there's a safety concern. If that's not happening, that's something different, and that you should be taken care of immediately. If you can, just get out and find help, whatever that looks like for you. But for the rest of everybody, I think trying to make it work is the best. Um, because it may just be, and this is equivalent to child attachment, it may just be some what we call relationship ruptures or injuries that have happened that just never got healed. And with a really skilled couples therapist who understands that, And the type of therapy I always recommend, and there's others out there, is Gottman or emotion focused therapy, which is Sue Johnson, or IFS, Internal Family Systems, has a couples therapy or a family therapy model too. Those three have things in there that can maybe help repair. If you've gone beyond that and you're absolutely sure, then really try to have a lens up for what it, and you have children, I'm assuming, we're talking about children today. Try to have that lens on of what's in the best interest of your child, if you have a
Right.
choice. Any litigation, in my opinion, isn't. So I think that going the mediator route would probably be best if you at all possibly can, and you have to go that route. Try somebody who's a good mediator. You have to find them. I know of a few in this area, but I'm not going to name names on a podcast. But the doing that, the difference between having an attorney who's going to take you to court, go to court with you versus a mediator is mediators who actually try to work things out in a civil manner that will be in the best interest of everybody in the family. And a lot of them will think about the children's interests. If you go to an attorney and you go to litigate in court, then the family law system is not geared towards children's best interests. It just isn't. It's nothing personal to any judge or attorney out there. The system itself is just is cutting the kids' needs out. And I personally would like to see that change, and I'm trying to figure out how can we do that. I'm this little person, don't know how to make that big change. I'd love to see that change somehow, but so that's what I would say. Go that route first. And then again, keep your children in mind, pay attention to your child. Listen to
Right.
them, talk to them, don't ignore them because they're lost and scared. They get scared when the parents fight. They get scared when someone leaves the house. So someone should be checking in with them every day, several times a day. Don't cut out their special activities. Try to keep them in the same school. Try to have play dates or time for them to hang out. Things like that, if we're going to talk about child-centered, would be really good to
Right.
do.
Right. And just one question. So litigation versus mediation, from my understanding, litigation is really more, kind of not hardcore, but just the laws and property and things like that, right? It's going to be more I mean, I'm simplifying it, but to me, it feels like more bickering, right?
Yes,
As
the
opposed
fighting.
to, right. And mediation is more trying to see both sides. Now, do both parents have a mediator, or it's a person that is in between the two that is trying to,
Yes.
uh, it's one person?
It's one person. So that's the
Okay.
thing is that it's one person. Oftentimes they are attorneys. Sometimes, I mean, I could take my training and become a mediator too. It could be a therapist. It could be whoever is qualified to do that with the training. So they're there to try to help both sides get what they need and get compromise. And they
Okay.
don't go to court to fight. To go to
Okay.
court to fight, they both have to get separate attorneys or represent themselves with probably someone else having an attorney go in front of a judge. With a
Okay.
mediator, you don't do all that. And what happens
Okay.
is mediation keeps the emotionality of the family system and all that lower. When we go into litigation, and I'm saying it, it's just go to court or you get two attorneys and you're going to end up in court. You have a really high risk of this turning into a big giant fight, and it
Mm,
doesn't need to be. So
right.
if you could keep it small and still get your needs met and your kids are getting their needs met again, that's the best way, in my opinion. A
Right.
lot of
Right.
people think that way that understand what children need,
Right.
because
Right.
the going to court with two different attorneys, it just gets exaggerated. And then you have two attorneys, and I love attorneys. I love working with them. I have relationships with many. They're great people. They try their best, but sometimes they have their own personal agenda, their own personal stuff that they haven't done therapy to work on, and so they project that on. And that I've watched these in cases, and I see these cases getting these huge things, and there's no domestic violence, there's no child abuse, there's no substance abuse. What are we fighting for? And you can just see it, they
Right.
add two. So now you got two other people, and then you add the layer of the judge who has whatever their personal lenses, on, and now you've just put yourself in the middle of the system too. That's the other thing. Mediation, it sort of keeps you out of these strangers making decisions in your family's life. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
if it at all possible, stay out of the court if you can,
Right.
because you
Right.
never know. I sat there on a friend's case once, for instance, this is just a small example. They had been sent out of the courtroom to make a decision on custody and visitation or parenting time, like for holidays and all this stuff and how to split it up. Hours in the morning. Came back that afternoon. The two attorneys presented the decision that the parents had agreed on. And the judge says, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this, and undid the whole thing. So that's why
Oh,
you don't want to go to court if you can help it. The
right.
judge in some ways was right in some ways, but still, I mean, that's just you now had somebody who doesn't know you at all, other than what they see in the courtroom, make a
Right.
decision in your life and your child's life. So, not to go off
Right.
on that wild hair, but
Right.
that's the difference. It's
No, no,
it's
it's
taking out the
important to
system.
know. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
important to know. And then, you talked about that before anything, try to repair the relationship and such. Have you again like found reoccurring reasons why there might be this rupture and this need for repair with adults, like other than, of course, like you said, abuse or violence or anything like that. But what are some common threads that are coming through with our parents today?
I think what happens, here's one that as I was doing couples therapy years ago more, I focused on that and family therapy and child therapy and mainly this over here in court. What I found is this: if we haven't gotten through that power struggle phase in our relationship in the beginning stages, we have a child really early on in a relationship, a committed relationship or marriage, whatever it ends up being, and we have a child early, and then we don't take the time for the marriage to nurture it like a plant, so to speak, after the child is born. A reasonable period of time. That first year is a little rough,
Mm-hmm.
because because of all the reasons the babies can be, because they also are demanding sometimes at nighttime, right? So we don't get our sleep that we need the first year or two, depending on your temperament of your child. When we keep having children after that, and I'm not judging anybody, I don't care who has how many or whatever, but if we keep having children and we don't take time in between children to focus on the marriage, have some respite care. Let mom and dad or whoever go and have some time alone, you know? Make sure that the needs of the adults are being cared for too.
Mm,
That way they can come together and keep that marriage going and keep it solid. Hopefully it was solid before the baby came, but keep it going, because if we're not taking time to it, it's going to slide backwards or just sort of fizzle, and you're going to feel it's this disconnect that this couple has.
right.
So if they're not coming together, having hugs, saying good morning or anything like that starts to happen, you can see a deterioration in the affection. That means they're not taking time, most likely, to just make space, healthy space. And again, it depends on resources. Maybe you don't have a family member out here to give you some respite for even a couple hours to go on a date, and maybe not. But if there's any way to get creative, I've known couples that moved out from the Midwest out here. A few of them I've worked with, they had no family, no friends, but somehow they made it work. I don't know how they did it, but they were able to do these dates at home, like getting really creative. So I think that's what the big thing is in the couples work I've done before I started doing this heavier high conflict divorce work with families, that they just don't take time, and then it just deteriorates, and then they get resentful, and then all that. If you read Gottman's literature, you get into the four horsemen, and there's resentment and complete I'm forgetting the name, sorry, contempt. When contempt starts coming in, then that's it. That's so hard to reverse from. However, you can, because I've watched couples come in and just they seem like they hated each other, and they were able to turn that around with the right therapist. You have to have the
Mhm.
right therapist.
Mm. Yeah, and that to me, it just makes, so much sense. We talk so much about, I mean, I talk a lot about mothers and self-care and that you need to fill your cup and so forth. But the couple, like the initial love, match and birds and why you started the family, that needs to be nurtured. And I know for me personally, I remember my mother being very outspoken about that it was very important that we, had a date night and that we took the time to go out. And it's true, it's not easy, but you have to make it a priority, that it's part of the self-care of the family to, be able to withstand all of the trials and tribulation, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, anything else that you would like to maybe add for those listening that are feeling, a little discontent and disillusioned with this whole idea of, parenting partnership, and they're ready to throw in the towel?
As in intact families, they're currently together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I know I'm a therapist, but I would recommend therapy or doing, parent coaching, whatever works for you, because
what if one of the parent resists that? Because I have a lot of families who know that they should, but the other partner isn't on board, and it's
Sure.
So can you still do therapy on your own? I mean, is that going to help? Or
of course, yeah. I mean, there's always, if you can't get your partner to join you in the program, then you can always work on how you react to them not joining in the program. And sometimes I call it backdooring. If you can work on your own reactions and not come across as controlling, and I'm sorry about that happening. My phone should have been off. Talking about if they feel like you're being controlling because you're trying to get them to do something and they're getting defensive, that's power struggle. That means, to me, that means we need to do some couples therapy, because that shouldn't be happening post kids as much. But in that, developmentally, in a marriage or a committed relationship, either way, it just shouldn't be showing up later on like that. It means that there's some work that needs to be done. But you can either go to individual therapy, but go with somebody that understands relationships, because if you go with someone that gives you advice to
Right.
divorce, that's not the right therapist for you.
Right.
There's some people out there that do that, and it's not our place as therapists or coaches to say, go get a divorce. You sound like you have a horrible partner. If you have anyone telling you that professionally, they're completely out of line. So don't listen to them. Go to somebody who wants to encourage the family, a healthy couple. But you can do things individually. Like when people see me individually, I am thinking of the family and the coupleship at the same time. I'm not just, you're in a vacuum with me. Do the things you do to talk to them, how you approach your partner and trying to bring them on, as opposed to coming across as anxious maybe, or because controlling usually a lot of times, not usually, means anxiety. We get
Okay.
anxious about something, we need something to, and then we come across, hey, you got to do this. It's in your approach. So it could be just some simple coaching or counseling on your approach, managing your own emotions, taking care of yourself, like what you've talked about. And then you can maybe bring them along. And if that doesn't work, I would try some couples counseling or coaching, because there's something deeper going on. Because what parent wouldn't want a child to behave or be happy and thriving in their home? That sounds like power struggles up here in
Right.
a couple, not with parenting. So that's just a symptom, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. If you're having your partner rebel against you, if that's what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's something else going on there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's always so many things going on, right, under the surface, and and to me, I'm fascinated by your work, because it's really about doing that digging and uncovering and figuring out what's going on, and it must be fascinating. So yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Wonderful. Well, this has been wonderful, Cathy. And I always like to kind of circle back maybe to a more personal question. Now, are you a parent yourself?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So, if I may ask, what is the age of your eldest?
In their 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were to go back 20 some years ago when you were first expecting your first child, what wise words would you tell yourself knowing all that you know today?
Take a deep breath, for sure. Don't even think you're going to be a perfect parent. And this is coming from someone who has a developmental, psych background. And so I had my Sears and Sears baby book out, watching every 2 weeks for the developmental milestones. That was fun, but you can't get locked into that stuff. There is no book for each kid. Every child is different. We don't know what they're going to turn out to be. Every child has a different temperament. I wish I would have been incorporating that in all my training at home as a mom, and understood that so I didn't get stressed out when things weren't going
Mm,
quite like I expected them to go. And it's always going to be that way. So you have to sort of be flexible and get your sleep. Don't, I would tell myself, please don't go cleaning. Take your nap when your baby naps. I know we read about that, but that's really a thing. Like
it
sleep
is.
deprivation is probably one of the hardest things in the early parts of parenting. But just um, that and grace. I mean, just give yourself grace as a parent
Mm,
because we're
mm,
not perfect. We do what our parents did to us or did with us if we don't break that chain or cycle. So just, if I don't know. I didn't have this. I guess I'm not used to talking about myself. I'm used to working with others. So I guess, like, for instance, this isn't an issue for me, but if your parents shouted at you for spilling milk on the table, then take a look at how your reaction is when your kid spills milk and just take a pause, take a breath, and
right.
say, is that something, that you want to be as a parent, that's an important issue for you to correct? And how do you want that to look? But I wish, I mean, can I hold up a book that's like my favorite?
Sure.
Because, oh, but it's not here, is it? It's
Oh,
because I took it
wait,
out for someone else to see. Anyways, it's
what is
Anne,
it?
it's W.E. Galorie's No Matter What book. That is so funny. Oh,
Mm,
this would be totally inappropriate if I got off camera. It's
no
across the room.
matter.
No Matter What.
Okay.
And I was given that for my kiddo at an early age, and we read this every night. And it is basically the essence of what I teach and how I believe the core. And I felt this way as a parent and taught her, I hope, as she gets older and maybe has her own children someday. But it's unconditional love. No matter
Mm,
what. You do
mm,
this, I love you no matter what. This happens, you turn into a squishy bug, you turn into a grizzly bear, you're grim and grumpy, no matter what, small, I love you no matter what. And it's just such a great thing. So I think that if I could go back and remind myself that if that's all I do is show unconditional positive regard and show up for my child every single day for her emotionally that I can, we're not perfect, that is it. And just reassure
mm,
myself that I'm doing the right things by just doing that. All the
yes.
other tools, all the other parenting tools and techniques out there are just tools. It's the relationship that matters.
Mm, thank you for that. Very, very, very powerful. Thank you. Any parting words that you would like to leave our listeners, viewers with today?
Yes, I would. What I've been saying lately, I've been on a few podcasts, and I think what's important, if any of your listeners are rejected parents, and I do work with, it tends to be men that get rejected in my families that I don't have hard stats, but I do have women, and it's very difficult on moms when they have a child that don't want to see them. But anybody who's being rejected from a kiddo, I just want to say that you need to don't stop. Keep going. Keep contacting them, even if they say no. That doesn't mean show up at a graduation, go up and embarrass them and hug them unwantedly. That means show up at the graduation, write them a text, send them a note. Keep a duplicate of your cards you send them. Keep a duplicate if you have the resources of a little present you give them because you don't know if it's going to get thrown away. So when they grow up, and maybe you won't see your child their whole entire, whatever part of their life that you've been cut out. When they get to those mid 20s, like early to mid 20s, when our brain development is complete and they are
Mm,
now more mature and they have moved away from their other parent or their other situation, like to college or maybe gone off and gotten a job, that's when they come back around and go, what just happened? I don't know why I was mad at you.
mm,
Or, wow, I see all these cards I never opened, or there's something there, but if you didn't try reaching to them, they may look back and go, you didn't care about me at all. Well,
Right.
that wasn't the case because you were trying this whole time, but you want to keep going. And it's so hard for parents to keep going. They want to give up because it hurts to be rejected, you know?
Mm.
So that's the big thing is I want parents to know they need to keep going because I have talked to cases, I've been doing this long enough, from kids that were in elementary school, late elementary school, and they get up into their 20s and they do look back. There's been a few and they go, I have no idea why I was mad at my parent, but all I remember is they were at my graduation. I didn't want to see them, but I knew they were there.
Mm.
I knew that they had recognized my birthday. I knew they recognized like Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever. They showed up in a way that they could. And
Right.
that's what I hope for parents that are, if they're going through this, that they continue to try.
Okay. Thank you. Never give up.
Right? Never give up.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you, Cathy. This has been delightful. Thank you for being on the Art of Parenting today.
Thank you.